What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. We were about halfway through it, and my crappy computer decided to crash on me. So we're starting back over. I've got my friend Bud Bishop on tonight. We're going to talk about summer fishing trends on the Pamlico Sound. And if you don't fish the Pamlico Sound, don't turn this off, because these trends play true in so many large water estuaries, big bay systems from Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. All these trends will play true in that type of scenario. That's the thing, is people think, oh, that's not my area. But, the fish don't know if they're in North Carolina or South Carolina or Virginia or Georgia or Florida or Texas. They're all the same fish, and they're going to do the same thing. So definitely give this one a listen. Bud's a great captain. Got a lot of good information. And I already know it's going to be pretty darn good, because we recorded half of it and just lost it. So I can go ahead and guarantee you that it's going to be a decent podcast. But definitely check out I Strike Fishing, sponsor this podcast, and make great gear, great jigs, and other hooks for saltwater fishing, as well as freshwater fishing. And check us out on Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. I've got Bud. I'm gonna have Bud's information linked on the podcast show notes, as well as the YouTube description, and on his screen it'll have his Instagram there on the bottom of the screen. But I'm gonna go ahead and bring him on. What's going on, Bud?
Hey man, how's it going?
Oh, it's going just as good as the first time we asked each other those questions. But sorry about that. We'll hopefully get through it this time. My computer gave me a warning that it was almost full of storage, and so I started trying to delete stuff while we were recording, and I think that's what made it crash. So I will not mess with that this time. I think the stuff's deleted and we're good to go. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Let's just get right into it. Talking about some summertime stuff. How's your fishing been here recently?
It's been really good. Yeah. I'm really pleased with it. I was getting worried there for a couple days. It was getting tough. It was getting more like fishing, and it's picked
more
back
like
up.
Fishing and catching.
Yeah. So it's been really good.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome.
I'm really happy with it.
I think one thing we touched on here when we tried to record just a second ago was your boat, and I think that's such a cool factor of how you're able to cover that big water and get to where those fish are. So take people through your boat real quick and just kind of explain what you're running and how that helps with your summertime trout and red fishing.
Yes, I run a 24-foot Skeeter Bay boat, and it allows me to get into 8 to 10 inches of water with me and a couple people. If I got a full boat, I can get in about a foot of water, and that's being able to get out. I could probably pull it into shallower. It's just
walk it or drift sketchy. It through.
Yeah.
Yeah, 24-foot boat. Once you're on the bottom, you're not doing much moving up.
Yeah, you're not moving much. And I'm usually easing in these places downwind, so I'm usually, But yeah, it's perfect for me. It allows me to get out there in the big water, to get through what I need to get to where I need to be. And I don't think it's just because of it's a wide boat, but just the length of it really helps out in that Pamlico Sound. The Pamlico Sound is a rough body of water.
Yeah.
It is a very respected body of water, and it can get nasty quick, but I finally got a boat big enough. I feel comfortable taking people where we need to be.
What do you have to see on the forecast to be like, all right, no, we're not going?
30.
30,
Yeah.
30 is just hard to even with like a Carolina rig bait fishing, unless you're just straight up wind and there's piled in right there. It gets hard to fish in 30-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, so that's kind of the beauty of being on a trailer to me. Now, if we're big drum fishing, it can blow 40. I'm going.
Yeah.
And the harder it blows, the better they're going to bite.
Right.
But yeah, you can usually get on one side or the other and get out of it. Now, trout fishing and throwing spoons for drum and stuff like that. Once it gets up to about 25 and you're fishing the leeward side, you can't throw into the wind.
No.
Those fish are so boat shy at that point. You can't throw in the wind.
You're making so much noise too with the boat, water smacking.
It's slapping real bad. So
for your redfish up there, are they pretty spooky, or are they generically pretty, pretty unbothered by your boat?
Yeah, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. So you really won't spook them. But if you catch one, you'll bring the school to you. You'll bring the school to the boat, and they'll hang out around the boat. But if you drive up on them too quick, you'll spook them, and you'll never see them again.
Yeah.
So I really don't understand it. It seems like if a fish pulls them to the boat, they're fine with it. But if the boat pulls up to the fish, they freak out.
It makes sense. They're kind of moving into that territory rather than something large moving into their territory.
Yeah, that's right.
And I see it with my skiff all the time, too, in really shallow water. Even if somebody's casting a fly rod or something like that, or a spoon or a jig or whatnot, and they rock that boat a little bit, we can be 50 yards away from the fish. And when that boat wake rolls onto those fish in that shallow water, they feel it, and they'll wake up and push around a little bit. I just think they're when they're sitting still or when you're approaching them, they're so much more aware of what's going on than when they're approaching you if you're sitting still. So they're cool fish though. Like you said, like once they get in there and they're comfortable with you, they're like, this isn't a big deal.
Oh yeah.
You see it with the big redfish a lot too. I think the big redfish sometimes get dumber than the little ones. The little ones are, they almost have an education sometimes, and the big redfish, and they get all.
I just don't think
up.
They care, man. I mean, they're just like whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what it is.
You're not a tiger shark. I think we're good. You're not a bull shark.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, take people through. That's a phrase I've started saying on here a lot. Take people through. I don't really know what it means, but let's talk about kind of what you're looking for in a spot or a location. Like what kind of bottom, what kind of territory, what makes a good red fishing spot for you in the Pamlico?
In the Pamlico, I mean, you want to find a sandy bottom. You want to find something. If you're just keying on drum,
yeah,
that's it. Then you want to find a sandy bottom. You want to find somewhere under 3 foot deep, 2.5 foot, preferably to about 1 foot.
Okay.
And but it's got to be sandy, and it can either have spots of grass in it, or it can have roots, old stumps, stump beds, stuff like that. Those drum are going to hang around, and don't be afraid to go too shallow. You can't go too shallow.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to sit off, and they cast up to as shallow as they think they need to go to, and they're missing so many fish that are that much shallower.
Yeah.
And that's just where the drum like to hang out around here.
It's correct me if I'm wrong, because I have not done much puppy drum fishing in the Pamlico at all. You're not targeting them on any, like, I guess you probably could, but a lot of these spots you're talking about right now, they're probably pretty gradual edges. Like it's a real gradual slope up to where they are, which can make it tough at first or intimidating to find those fish. It's very easy when you've got that little secondary edge and they're cruising up and down that secondary edge. So,
I mean, a lot of these are just beaches, that you can see with, above the surface.
Yeah.
And if you were to get your boat up there and pick your trolling motor up and stand on the bow, with some good sunglasses on and just cruise down it, you're going to find a school of fish.
Yeah.
And we did that last year. We were able to get on a program where we were sight casting for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Last year. And that's something I've never done here before. And we were catching them in water that was too shallow for my boat to get in. We were casting to them and pulling them out of it.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna trailer my Pathfinder up there with that new tower I've got on it, and we're gonna go to all your spots and just try to sight fish them. I think we can do it. And then I guarantee you in a month you're gonna have one of those for your boat.
Probably.
That thing. It is mind blowing how much you can see from that. And I've had a boat with a tower in the middle, but being up there on the bow, and like right at the front of it is even more. It's crazy how much your eyes are distracted from the back of the boat with everything that's going on in the boat than when you're like right on the front just looking straight into the water. It's a cool scenario. But
yeah, that is cool.
But no, it's a tool. That's how I look at sight fishing. I love sight fishing, but for me, it's a tool in the arsenal. Some days you're bait fishing, some days you're trying to sight fish, and I've sometimes spoiled myself to the point of like it hurts me because I'm like, God, I gotta see them. I gotta know they're there. Like I need to know these fish are there, and then I go in there and blow a school out, and then can't find them again. So, kind of easing your way in there can be important. So, how do you go about locating these fish? Like you found what you think is a good area. What's your kind of way to go in there and check it and scout it and whatnot?
Well, see, we get all geeked out about sight fishing here because we don't have it.
Right.
And, I mean, we had it some last year for a very few weeks. The wind was right. The water clarity was right. It doesn't happen like that all the time. Most of the time we're just blind casting.
Yeah.
And just blind casting to some some stumps that are in the water, off the bank, anything like that, as long as there's a good population of drum that year, there's going to be fish there.
Yeah.
At one time or another,
yeah.
They're going to be there. I don't get real confident in fishing an area unless I see bait, either on the surface or on my sonar.
Yeah.
That's what makes me confident, and that's what makes me, really buckle down, sit there, and fish it. These trout, especially the trout and the drum, here, they're not a run and gun thing. You can't hit a spot 10 minutes and turn around and go to the next spot. It's just not going to happen. It seems like you pull your boat in there, it's going to take 15 minutes for everything to settle down and get back to normal. And a lot of these schools of drum we find just from, trout fishing.
Yeah.
You run across a school of drum, and then all of a sudden you're like, you catch 10 drum in a row, why did I catch them there?
Right.
And then you pull up to the bank after you've blown it out, and you'll see like a little relief or a old crab pot sitting down there or something like that.
Right.
And that's something you can take throughout the entire sound and duplicate.
Yeah. Now, do you feel like, this is a question that just popped up in my head, could you go with that large, let's call it a desert, if you will, like lots of open, vast areas, and you're looking for those little ecosystems with a little bit of structure or something going on? Could you make yourself a spot? Could you go in there and throw out some crap and some old crab pots and some junk? Like, would that, within the next year, would there be redfish on that spot?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If not the next year, definitely the year after.
Once it gets a little growth on it and stuff. Yeah. Those redfish, man, they will find something, like you're saying, like a crab pot or anything that's going to hold a little bit of bait. How scent-oriented are those fish up there? Not necessarily on your bait, but like
I would definitely say that scent works.
Yeah.
Scent helps. I would not say you have to have it. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't say I wouldn't go fishing.
Right.
I use every single day I use E-Man with no scent on it.
Yeah.
And it works.
Works just
fine.
It works fine. That's kind of what I tell people too, is like, I don't think it's going to hurt you, but those fish,
if you have scent to put on it, by all means put it on
there,
because it's not going to hurt you. Yeah. It's only going to help you.
There's the few times where I hate it is if I'm in an area with a lot of pinfish or a lot of small croakers and I'm fishing slow and they're just tearing my bait up, or not. I fish Z-Man as well. They're not necessarily tearing your bait up, but they're just annihilating that bait as you're bringing it back in, and you can't get a good retrieve on it. And then sometimes I'm like, well, dang, maybe I think that might be why I got bit, because that croaker was gnawing on it, and then that redfish saw what was going on and swam over there and ate it. So it's like, that's fishing though, right? It's like you have an explanation, right, but then you've got like the exact flip side of why maybe it is working. So I think that's why I'm so addicted to it, because like every day questions are answered and other ones are like unanswered. So, and
I learn something literally every day I go. And I mean, sometimes it's the dumbest stuff. The other day I passed the pier, and I've never fished at this pier. It's 1.5 feet deep. The whole pier is. And I always see the waves breaking on it. It's always muddy, and I've just never stopped there. Well, a few days after that, it was blowing. That was the leeward shoreline. And it was blowing so hard, there was no other place to fish. And I had a couple of my buddies with me, and they were like, man, we just want to go fishing. Yeah. And so I was like, well, we ain't going to catch anything. And I was like, but I'm going to put you on the leeward shoreline, or we're going to start fishing. We got to that pier, and I found a massive school of speckled trout off the end of this pier in just a little hole, that I never knew was there. They were all 18 to 22 inches. And we just sat there and just one after another. And I was cheesing from ear to ear. Like, I was so happy. And so the next day I had a trip. And I went back there. They weren't there. I found them on the shallowest side of the pier in about 1.5 feet of water. The next day I went back. They weren't at either spot. I found them on a drop-off, on a 6 to 10-foot drop-off about 50 yards off the pier. They were right on that ledge.
Dang.
And now every single time I go back, I'm going to find them fish at one of those 3 places.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome that they were in different spots each time. So it made you look around. You're like, I know these fish haven't all left.
Yeah, that's right.
That's super cool. Well, just while we're talking about trout real quick, and you talked about how, a lot of times you're trout fishing and you're locating your redfish that way. Share with me kind of how you're doing that. Are you just beating down a bank with a mirror lure? Are you floating shrimp on a cork? How are you typically, searching for trout in the summer?
I was against it at first. Side scan is my best friend.
Yeah.
Electronics have slowly become a big part of
Let's
my
face
trout
it, you're
fishing.
a video game fisherman at this point.
Yes. Side scan is key. I have found so much stuff on side scan, and it's just anything that's not right. That doesn't look normal, and any kind of lump. I mean, just an old crab pot that got ripped from its buoy. I mean, anything like that. There's going to be bait there, which is there's going to be fish there, and if you can get yourself 5 to 10 places like that, and the conditions are right, you can pull up there and catch them, pretty much at will, and you really don't have to worry about other people, finding them.
Yeah.
Unless they already know about them.
Yeah.
Now, beating the bank for trout it's worked for 100 years. It works now. It's always going to work. Those trout are always going to be up there, especially the big trout. The big trout, I believe they go up in those shallows. Some of the biggest trout we catch are in 1.5 foot, 2 foot of water.
Right.
And it's just, and when you catch them up that shallow, they hit so aggressively, especially on a jerkbait. They'll rip the rod out of your hand.
Yeah.
Because they're going up that shallow just to feed. And it seems like they're easier to fool when you fish that shallow.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, which way do you want to do it? Do you want to stay away from the crowd, or do you want to get on the bank? Both of them work, but it's just, to us, it's kind of like, what do we have the clients for that day to do?
Right.
I mean, if we start out our trip and we smoke them in the first 45 minutes, then guess what? I got 6 hours where I can go discover
some new stuff. Yeah.
Some new stuff. But if I start out my first 3 spots up, then I'm going to beat down every spot I got.
Yeah.
Until we find them. And even if we find them at a spot I already knew about, they're not always, on that same break. They're set up differently every time.
Yeah.
And it's always something different. And there's usually, if you think hard enough, there's usually always a reason why.
Yeah.
And if you can, that's really the key, is just figuring out the reason why, and then you learn something that day about them.
Yeah.
And then you can duplicate that on all the other places.
Yeah, I think that's
but
huge.
They are trout. And, they will mess you up. I mean, as soon as you think you got them down pat, man, they will throw you for a loop.
They're funny fish, man.
Quick.
I think that's what I love so much about them. I used to not give a rip about a trout. Like, I was like, I'm going to be a really cool, just a fly fishing guide. Like, I'm just going to take people to fly fish because that's the coolest type of fishing. Now I hate fly fishing. But, I mean, I love it, but I've just grown to love so many other types of fishing and every style of fishing. And nothing against fly fishing. Still love it. Even though I just said I hated it. But it's... To me, I like to use every style of fishing as a tool to become a better angler, to find fish a different way, to catch fish, But man, the trout are just a fun fish to target because they're a lot like a bass. Like, you can catch them in a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different places, different depths, different baits. And then as soon as you got them dialed, they're doing something completely different. So that's what I like about them. They just keep them on my toes. I think out of the 3 fish that we have here in North Carolina inshore to target on a regular basis, the trout will make you a better fisherman, than any of the other ones. So,
and I'll give you a little thing that I did a few years ago, and I'm reluctant to say this, but
here comes the juice.
Is I went out there and I took all the land around me, and I just made it go away. All right, so our shoreline drops to 4 foot pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
3 to 4 foot pretty much everywhere. I took all the visible shoreline, and I made it disappear. I took that 4 foot ledge and I brought it up. And I fished nothing but the outside ledge from that. So I'm not fishing the bank. I'm fishing the next ledge.
Yeah.
And I did that everywhere. It's underwater points. It's, there's so much more stuff down there, and is fishing the windward shoreline when the waves are breaking on the bank real hard. Those trout are not going to be there. They're too weary.
Right.
But if you back up 100 yards and you get on that next break, you're going to smoke them.
Yeah.
And it was very surprising to me to find out how many fish, how many fish were there, and I just had no idea.
Yeah.
And I tried it a few times, and it worked every time. And now I'm dead set on it. I mean, when I come out the ditch and it's blowing 15, 20 miles an hour, I'm not going to the calm side. I'm going to the rough side.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about anybody over there. And, I mean, there's going to be fish there. But if you just fish on the weekends, I can see where, that process is going to be frustrating to you because you're going to have to travel so much area
right.
In order to find fish and find a pattern and get confident in it. Because if you're not confident in it, you're not going to fish so hard.
Right.
But it does work.
Yeah.
Deep water speckled trout fishing does work.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, it definitely does, man. I think that's one way that saltwater inshore anglers, that's where we're our weakest is fishing that, in the bass world, it's called fishing offshore. I mean, we're not fishing offshore, but you're fishing off that shoreline, fishing those secondary ledges, those drop-offs, those underwater points like you're talking about. Like, those are fish relate to those more so than they're going to relate to bank. You're going to get fish, and there's no pressure on it. The only pressure is the people that are sitting on top of them throwing to the shoreline, but those fish, in that deeper water, they'll slide off and slide back to it much quicker than they're going to slide right up to a shoreline. But that is, especially in your type of estuary, like such a key factor is getting off the bank. Like, there's times to be on the bank, but a lot of times when you run past that boat, that you're like, where the heck are they fishing? Like, they're fishing way out. They know what the frick they're doing. You think they don't know what they're doing, but they're the ones that are smoking them. And I'm not saying rip people's spots like that, but just start to think in that way. Like, where's those secondary edges? Now, are you running a certain chip or anything like that allows you to kind of see those secondary edges and see that stuff? Is it like any navionics or special stuff in your GPS?
I've got the Garmin 12, and I've got the quick draw contours on it.
Yeah.
And so pretty much every time I run anywhere, it maps it out. But I've got the 1 foot contours as well. And it's pretty much, I mean, honestly, anytime you see a row of crab pots, that's going to be your drop off.
Yeah. They're putting them right on that edge.
And those crab pots were, full of bait. There's going to be bait all around those crab pots. That's going to be the best place. And to hide it from people, I'll actually get a casting length off the bank, but we'll be fishing out the other side of the boat. Yeah. And people, blast by me, and they just don't realize it.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool, man. I remember, being out at lakes as a kid and seeing dudes in bass boats like freaking 300 yards off the bank. I'm like, what are the bass live up on the bank? Why aren't they up on the bank fishing? Like, what are they doing out here? But they knew what they were doing. Well, let's jump back into redfish a little bit. Tell me about what you like to target these fish with this time of year, both on, artificial side as well as bait, and kind of how you approach a spot and fish both.
Yeah, so the spoons, I use a lot of gold spoons.
Any specific gold spoon you like?
No, just the regular Hopkins.
Gotcha.
Hopkins gold spoon.
So is that the one with the
Johnson?
Is the Hopkins is the treble, Johnson is the fixed weedless?
Johnson.
Okay, sweet.
That's what it is. I always get them mixed up. The Johnson gold spoons and the silver spoons, depending on the clarity in the water and everything. Sometimes silver works better than the gold, but most time it's going to be the gold. I like to throw the 1/2 ounce.
Okay.
You can throw it in 1.5 foot of water and reel it about medium speed, and you're fine.
Yeah.
And then your regular popping cork. Popping cork with a Z-Man, 3-4 inch Z-Man. It's hard to beat. It stays in the strike zone so long.
Yeah.
You can throw it a country mile. It's hard to beat.
For sure.
Now, when it's blowing 30 miles an hour and you have a bunch of waves and a bunch of white water, it's hard to beat some fresh mullet.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get out there with some fresh mullet. You can really get them things fired up.
When you say fresh mullet, are you fishing live fresh mullet? Or
no, just cut mullet.
Cut mullet, gotcha. Okay, yeah. Sweet. Are you able to find mullet up there yet? consistently?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. We have it here right now. Are you when you're fishing fresh mullet? Are you catching those bigger hardhead mullet or those big striped mullet and cutting them up? Or are you still a lot of finger mullet and cutting them up?
It's a lot of finger mullet, some sea mullet, smaller sea mullet.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
We've got the fish around or the mullet around now, but a lot of them are too small. Like you throw your net on them and they're you'll throw in 50 of them and you get 5 of them. So
yeah, just too small.
Just a little too small. But that's one thing, man. I never fish. All my buddies like you, Jennings, everyone like even for like the big drum fishing the cut mullet, and I've never really fished cut mullet. I always fish mullet live and fished like chunk pogie, but I need to try the cut mullet game down here. I mean, I think I've probably fished it some, but it's not a tool in my bag, if you will.
I mean, it's not a very sportsman.
Oh, it's
way to go.
It's sportsman, man. You got to catch the mullet, then you got to cut it, then you got to put it on a hook and throw it out there.
But I can tell you, if you get the right clients and you got the right weather, it's like nothing else.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, it's honestly as fast as you can work. Yeah, I mean, it's just nonstop the whole time.
Yeah, that's fun. Golly, I want to come do that. Take me through the retrieve of your gold spoon. I know you said medium speed. Are you doing any twitching? You just straight rolling it back to the boat?
Yeah, just straight rolling it and hold on. I mean, because they're going to absolutely snatch it.
Yeah.
When they hit it, it's not going to be it gets heavy all of a sudden. It's just whack.
Yeah. God, they hit it so hard.
They got it.
It's crazy how different the bite is from a trout.
They can't go down. They got to go. They got to go out.
Yeah.
And they hit it and immediately turn around and they're gone.
Yeah. It's a fun bite. It is a very fun bite. You fish spinnerbaits much up there at all?
No, I don't. I have some that I just got the other day. I've not fished them yet, but I'm really looking for. I had some guy make me some. Nice. And I'm really looking forward to them.
They're hard.
He put treble hooks on them, which I was kind of upset about, but I'm gonna switch them out.
Yeah. I like a spinnerbait a lot. You can't necessarily get the distance you can with a gold spoon, especially thrown into the wind. But I fish that little Z-Man ice strike spinnerbait they're making now, and I love it. Yep. It's a good, strong, stout wire, and those fish smack it. The only problem with a spinnerbait is sometimes you'll get those fish eating the blade a lot. They'll come up and eat the blade, and you'll set the hook and pull it out of their mouth. And with the spoon, like the flash is the hook. That's the beautiful thing about that.
That's right.
So when they eat it, they're getting the whole thing. I fish the gold spoon a lot as well, but I do. It's one of the artificials that I will pull fish off on. Sometimes, I think that leverage they can get with that big spoon in their mouth and that hook attached to it. But usually the hook's driven in there well, but I don't know if they're just turning it and popping it off. Do you fish it? Do you fish on a medium heavy, medium light? What kind of rod are you throwing it on?
Medium light.
Medium light.
Medium light fast.
Medium light fast. Heck yeah. Popping cork, is it pretty consistent? Just pop, pop, pop all the way back to the boat? You pausing it?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in 4 foot of water, 3 to 4 foot of water, it's pop, pause. Pretty slow. The shallower, the faster you go. Yeah. When we get to 1.5 feet, it's pretty aggressive.
Yeah. Just almost like a top water back to the boat, just with the bait behind it.
Yeah. I mean, me and D-Hart were out the other day. It was one afternoon. In fact, it's a funny story. He called me up, and he was like, "Hey, man, what are you doing this afternoon?" I was like, "Man, I ran 2 trips. I'm dead. Like, I'm done. I'm at the house." He was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to go catch some slot drum on top water. I was just seeing if you wanted to go, but being you're too dead, then we'll just..." I was like, "I'll be there. What time?" And I met him there. We ran out there, and we started fishing, and we threw it. And the wind was blowing so hard that it actually blew the cork. As soon as I hit the water, it blew the cork. The drum came up and surfed the wave behind the cork and followed it while the wind was blowing it. And as soon as it stopped, he dove down and hit it. It was nuts. It was the craziest eat I've ever seen.
That's so sick, man.
It was awesome.
That's visual awesome. Right there. It's hard to beat those fish, man. They're so fun. It's I can tell.
I mean, it's so different from us. I mean, because we don't catch them like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and in fact, a lot of these fish this year, they're probably going to be aged out by next year. And next year may not be a great year for the slot drum for us, but I mean, this year it's awesome. That's why we're also jacked up about it.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, that's so true, man. You watch those fish age out. We've got a good number of slot redfish around too. And it's just the grass is always greener. Like the way I fish all the time, I'm like, God, I want to come up there and do what you do every day. And it'd be the same if you were down here. You'd want to swap it out. It's like it's just any type of fisherman like you or I. It's fun to just see the differences, the changes, like fishing for fish in a different way. I always like to switch it up when I can. But yeah, it's cool just to see like, it's totally different estuary, different area, but fishing the same lures the same way, catching those fish.
I mean, good rule of thumb for me is if it's blowing more than 15 miles an hour, I'm going to go drum fishing. I can do a less methodical retrieve with that, less methodical fishing. I can catch them. They respond better when it's rough, noisy, water, white water, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The drum respond better that way. I don't have to have clients that, can fish very methodically.
Right.
And when it's calm, I go trout fishing.
Yeah.
Because I can approach more methodically. Even if I don't have clients that are very good fishermen, I'm able to teach them because it's calm. We have the right conditions. So it's kind of like you just let Mother Nature tell you what you're going to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, even tomorrow morning, I can't tell you what I'm going to do tomorrow morning.
I know you get some of the clients that are like, they'll book a trip a month and a half out, and they're always like, and for me, it's so tide dependent when I'm looking at it, and then it's weather dependent after that. First off, I'm looking at the weather, and then I'm looking at the tide. It just depends on the day and what the clients want to do. But I'll get someone that books a trip like 2 months out, and they're like, "Can you tell me like what boat ramp we'll be at and what time we'll meet and all that?" And I'm like, I really, honestly, I'd love to, but I can't tell you probably until the night beforehand, then maybe that morning before at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, we're gonna meet at 6. I'm gonna call you at 5:30.
Exactly. Be up, make sure you got a cup of coffee in you, and be ready to rock and roll.
Right.
That's cool. Tell me a little bit about your trout fishing, kind of artificials versus bait. How you're going about targeting these fish?
Yeah. So the trout, kind of the same thing. I mean, you have your shorelines that have always been better than others, and there's a reason why. There's more current on that shoreline at more times. If you come into a new spot and you're not sure why you didn't do well that day, 90% of the time there's probably current in that area, and there might not have been current the day you were there. But a lot of these fish, they feed with current, and that was a hard thing for me to figure out. And it might just be, just the slightest little bit. Around here, we're all wind driven.
Right.
And so if it blows a certain direction for a long time, the following 2 days after that, we're going to have a lot of current. There's just a lot of water coming back, and there's a lot of water leaving. And that's going to be our key times to really get to our main points that have a big current breaking and hit these fish.
Yeah.
Now, if there's no current and we got the same weather nonstop every day, then you pretty much got to bank it, hop.
Yeah.
Until you find the bait. If I'm not seeing bait, I just don't have any confidence in fishing it.
Yeah. That's the difference between you and I. Like, bait means absolutely nothing for my redfish down here.
Really?
Because we're getting in these tight little creeks, these little pockets, and they're absolutely loaded with bait. There's shrimp in them, there's mullet in them, there's mud minnows, there's menhaden in them. And so it's like, there's times a year where bait does mean a lot, but this time of year, the bait is like, I'm not looking for bait, I'm looking for the fish. And so it kind of sucks because that bait is such a key giveaway in so many areas that I've fished all up and down the coast. But here in the summer, there you could throw a cast net at dead low tide where I was today in any direction, and you would have floated it with mullet, menhaden, and shrimp in it. So
see, it's not like that here.
Yeah, but then when the tide gets high, all that's dispersed out, across a large area. But on that dead low tide, it's all piled in. So, just because they have to be there, but it's funny how that plays, and not that bait doesn't matter. I mean, bait, if you're in an area and there's absolutely no bait, you're probably not going to see any fish there either. But a lot of the areas, there's a lot of areas with tons of bait that don't have fish as well. Is kind of what it boils down to. But yeah, that's one thing I've started to learn too with my trout fishing down here is like, you're drawn to that wind protected bank because it feels easier to fish and looks fishy because it's calm. But you really start to learn, like, a lot of the times those fish are sitting out in that slop and in that crap, and It wasn't. As long as I can get that if the water quality is garbage for me here, the drum I can still catch them on bait, but the trout and then drum on artificials get kind of hard if the water gets sloppy. But yeah, that's super cool. Are you catching these fish? If you sat there and threw a bait that they would both eat, are there a lot of places in the summer that you can could go back and forth, cast on cast, like maybe not every cast, but catch redfish and trout in the exact same spot?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's how we find a lot of redfish.
Yeah.
It's just by trout fishing. I mean, very rarely do we ever go and just target redfish unless we get a hard nor'easter.
Yeah.
Or a hard southwest wind.
How often will you at all bump in any of those big bull redfish this time of year in that shallow water?
Yeah.
You will?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we got broke off the other day on Topwater, and I know it was a bull drum.
Yeah.
In fact, the next day, I had a lady. She fished for me last year. She's not an experienced fisherman, but she's a good fisherman.
Yeah.
Well, she listens,
mm-hmm.
and she had the biggest trout I've ever seen in my life. On any picture in North Carolina, anything. The fang in this trout's mouth was from the tip of your thumb to your first knuckle. It was that I was shaking. And I shook for about 5 minutes after this trout came off. And when he came up, I should have brought the cork with me. So he came up and showed himself about 6 or 7 times. And when he got about 15 foot from the boat, he came up, and when he did that last thrash, he was so long that he bent his whole body in half, and when he came up to thrash that last time, he broke the swivel right through the metal on the cork, broke it right through it, and then busted the hook off at the same time.
Golly, man.
And that was it, dude. I almost cried. I was sitting there just shaking.
I'm about to cry.
She was like, and that was a nice one. I was like, yeah, that was... You would have been in the newspaper if you'd have caught that fish.
Was that a good one? Yeah, that was a good one. God, man, it really is. They say it, but it's the truth. It's always the big fish that gets away.
It really is. I don't know how big he was. He was 30 inches or over.
Yeah,
I know that.
Yeah.
How far he bent his body over to how much body he still had in the water. It was crazy. Yeah, his mouth was that big.
And he ate something on a cork. Was it a soft plastic or?
He ate a 5-inch diesel minnow.
5-inch diesel minnow. Golly.
Mm-hmm. Slam full of Procure. I will say that it was caked with Procure.
What's your Procure flavor that you like?
Just the trout.
The trout. Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think it. I think it just says trout on it.
Gotcha.
Actually.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Trout scent.
Yeah.
Right on. Do you have to cover much water up there in a day? Or actually, this is what I wanted to ask you earlier. I sat there. You had me kind of just dumbfounded by that story, and I kind of forgot my train of thought here. But when you are fishing a spot for the redfish, can you camp on a spot all day, or do you have to move around? Like, when is it done? When do you know, like, all right, it's time to move on and find another spot?
So with the trout, you really need to sit there and fish it. And I know you're talking about drum, but
go through both. Go through both.
The trout, you really need to sit there and fish it. I thought for a long time these trout just sat there and they just hovered. Either they're there or they're not, and that's not the case. I think these trout move back and forth, up and down all day. And if you're in a spot, if you pull up there, get a few bites, and you're like, oh man, they just shut off like a switch. It didn't happen. I think they moved up and down, one way or the other. Yeah. If you sit there, they're going to come back. The drum is pretty much, with the artificial fishing, it's pretty much a run and gun thing for me. I can pull in a creek that's shallow, real shallow on both sides, with trees coming all the way down to the water's edge, some roots coming out in the water, and I can fish that creek really quick. With a cork, just throwing a cork up there in the sweet spot, popping it. Just keep the boat moving, pop it. You don't get anything, just keep on rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here, our drum fishing is like that. You can roll to someplace pretty quick. And if you get a bite, then slow up, go back, and throw some spinner baits to it or something like that.
Right, for sure. That's kind of how I like to play too. Like, and I think it's just the mannerisms of the fish. Like a redfish, I can move through an area quicker and feel confident that I'm going to at least get the bite that tells me I need to slow down and pick it apart a little bit more. With the trout, sometimes I got to really slow down. Here's a myth that I've broken for myself in North Carolina. But so many people think like, oh, you're catching trout. Would you start at 4 a.m? Like trout in the summer only bite, first thing in the morning. How do you feel? Is that a true representation of speckled trout fishing up there, or do you feel like you can kind of get them all day long?
You can get them all day long. I mean, you may not get your nicer fish at lunchtime.
Yeah.
But obviously your first morning bite is going to be the best. Your overcast days are going to be better all day.
Yeah.
But there's so many times when we go out there in the pitch black, just throwing topwater in the pitch black, and all you can hear is that spook, knocking back and forth, and you just hear whoosh.
Right.
That's the coolest thing to me. If I could get clients to meet me at 4:30 in the morning, I would.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what gets me jacked up.
That's awesome.
Like, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I thought, to catch trout in the summer for the longest time, with any consistency, I need to go early in the morning, throw a topwater. But man, I've been really stoked the past 2 years on some of the trout stuff I'm figuring out here just in the middle of the day in the summer. And like you said, I'm not going to catch a 27, 28 inch fish probably that time of day, but I can go catch an ice keeper trout, in the middle of the day in the right areas, with the right lures. You got to try that dang deal. Well, I just don't know if the scenario up there is for you, but I'm just such a crackhead for the red flake DOA shrimp. No, the red flake DOA shrimp. It's
the DOA.
And it's not great under the popping cork because it just they'll eat it under a popping cork, but it dangles straight up and down. The voodoo will a little bit too, but just dead sticking it in a little bit of current. Like if you've got 3 feet of water to 5 feet of water and you got some current, that red flake DOA shrimp, just dead sticking it and swinging in the current is deadly. I'm sorry to anyone who listens to this podcast a lot because I bring it up all the time. You should, man. That has been my bait this summer. I mean, it's been my bait all the time. But I'll go to an area, throw a topwater, throw a swim bait, throw a trout trick, throw a mirror lure, no bites, throw a DOA shrimp in there, whack, first cast. I mean, the red flake too. They eat the mess out of it. So definitely a good like your spot off the dock, that deep hole. I bet if you threw a DOA in there and let it fall and twitched it, man, they would smoke it. But you running out of battery there? I saw your text. It's all good. You can share it on. No worries.
I'm sorry, man. I got 2%.
No, you're good, man. We're about 45 minutes anyways. I think we got some good stuff going. We'll definitely get you back on here soon to talk about some bull drum fishing, and we're going to be doing some video together. Me and Bud put some dates on the calendar to film some bull drum fishing this year, so be on the lookout for that. But guys, I'm going to link all of Bud's.
I'm stoked about that.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. That's going to be super fun. I'm going to link all Bud's stuff on here on the show notes, on the podcast platforms, as well as the YouTube description. Tell them real quick if they're listening, though, where they can find you.
MyRidgeCharters.com, and then Instagram and Facebook at MyRidgeCharters.
Sweet.
Just remember, guys, wherever you fish confident.
Fish confident. I like it. I'm gonna get a sticker with your face on it, and it's just gonna say "Fish confident" underneath it. And I'm gonna send.
Fish confident.
It's a good reminder for sure. But man, thanks so much for coming on, guys. Thanks for listening as always, and we will see y'all next week. Later.